Another one of those don't need to adjust your cameras. You know, today is Sunday, June 28th, 2020. And we're seeing here in Utah, kind of, I guess it's in conjunction with things opening up again. More and more places are making it mandatory now that you have to wear a mask to enter said establishment. And I ran into that business yesterday and I was like, okay, all right. So it seems like as we're gaining more privileges, there's restrictions that come with it, you know? In some ways, it kind of feels like my upbringing. It seems like the more opportunities I had when I was a youth, the more governing came down on me, like borrowing the car, or curfews, when you have to get home or whatever it may be, So it's like as you gain privileges, you find yourself, more kind of under the thumb of your superiors, as it were, or your governors, or however you want to look at it. But that's not the point of this little excerpt today. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine, and he is 69 years old, and his name is Al, and he's a really, really super nice guy. He's got a heart of gold. Just a rare entity in this world today. Positive, not a negative personality and outlook. Much more into giving than receiving. Extremely forgiving for those who trespass on him, and he tells me the stories of this one individual that's just driving him up the wall, but he keeps forgiving that person. But Al has had some health problems in recent years, and he's had serious bouts of cancer and tumors and radiation, and lives his life on oxygen, and he's paper thin. He lost his life partner of 36 years a few years ago. And I know that still weighs on him heavily. But I truly see him as one of those you can classify as an eternal optimist. And I respect the hell out of that. And I think in some ways I share those feelings with him. Not just about his optimism, but my own personal optimism, I mean, when I look back on my life and I see the trespasses and the things that have befallen me, it could be so easy for me to live my life so angrily, so pissed off and so cold and callous towards people. But then I think about, the people that have been the pluses and the good in my life. Maybe there hasn't been many in number, but sufficient for my heart. And I do truly share some of that personality, I've always said that my saving grace is my humor. And when I learned that I came from actors and radio personalities and comedians and shit like that on my dad's side of the family, biologically speaking, it answered a lot of questions about, who I was and what's made me tick all these years. But Al is clearly on the last legs of his life. And, I've been around and have worked with senior citizens over, throughout my life. And for what it was worth, I watched my adopted mother and father succumb to illnesses and age and ultimately death, and signing, orders to take people off life support, and cremations and scattering of ashes and divisions of wills and all of that. And I was relatively young when all that was going on because, some of you may know my adopted parents were significantly older when they adopted me at birth. But I broached a question to him today. And I said, Al, this might come out of left field, but could I ask you a personal question? He said, sure. And I said, are you afraid of dying? And he goes, oh no, not at all. Now this, of course, is coming from a man who's so weakened that, let's just say he's in his living room and gets up from his easy chair, with this long cord of oxygen, and it sits around his ears and it's nozzled up into his nose. That if he got up from his chair and walked, he has a ranch style house, walked, towards the back of the house to his bedroom to fetch something and to come back out and to sit back down, he's exerted himself. He's definitely taxed himself, and you can tell just the way he's trying to catch his breath, even moving at a slow pace. And that's why I always say when I'm around him, hey Al, what can I do to help you? What can I get for you? And he appreciates that, but he's still a very proud man and likes to do things himself as much as possible. And again, I admire the shit out of that. I'm kind of the same way. But I asked him today, I said, how do you feel about death? And he says, oh, no, I'm not fearful or scared of it at all. So I said, you're right with yourself, and you feel that, when that time comes, everything's okay. And he says, oh, yeah. And I believe him. And just in the time I've known him, I can believe that, his conscience is pretty clear. So he asked me why I asked him that question. And I said, in my life, there were periods when I was married and raising children and had a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. Those were the years that I discovered that I had acute anxiety disorder, and that, and panic attacks and things. And as the years went by, I identified with it and I worked through it, and I didn't allow Big Pharma to help me along. I found alternate ways to manage it. But it got less and less. And then I later realized the reason why, I guess, this potentially genetic anomaly happened was because I was taking on a lot of responsibilities at that time at a young age, and it was overwhelming. And that's the way my brain and my body, processed the stress. But as I got older and things kind of started smoothing out and kids became more independent and less, reliant, and, reducing debt loads and things, it got better. And also getting rid of drinking over 6 years ago surely helped. But when he asked me that question about why I asked him about death, I said, when I learned that someone in my life has died, or someone that was once in my life that maybe I was close to or semi-close to, when I hear about someone who's passed away, whether it's firsthand immediately after the fact or second or third hand years after the fact, The first thing I do when I hear that someone's passed away is I close my eyes and I envision them in my fabulous memory. And I try to, encapsulate like a picture of them. And I can see them. And then I ask myself, can I see them smiling? And then I achieve that. And then I focus real hard on trying to remember the sound of their laughter. And then I achieve that. And that's when I know in my heart that I was an asset in their life. That whatever our relationship is or was, I brought joy to you. I made you smile more than once. I made you laugh more than once. And then I think, how many times can I remember you yelling at me? Or being angry with me? Or maybe crying or being terribly sad from something that I said or I did. And it's rare that I can remember those moments. And I don't think it's selective memory. I think it's more the fact that I didn't hurt them. Because I don't like hurting people. And of course, needless to say, I don't like to be hurt either. But that's always one of the ways I've dealt with people that have come through my life, their death. Is, can I see them smile and can I hear their laughter in my mind? And almost every time I can. And that helps me process their loss. And I think that's kind of a beautiful way to look at it. You know, we all have our own ways of grieving or digesting or readjusting or coping with a loss of whatever it is. But I guess, in the end, if you know that you've done your best, and you know that you've brought more joy than sorrow, I guess when it's your turn, that's something that you can hang your hat on, and that you can lay to rest with. I don't know, I guess today is just kind of a gray day and just thinking about things, but that's kind of how I process things when there's a loss. And I also, try to use the humor when I'm at a loss myself with whatever it is that I've either, succeeded and or in this case maybe failed at or whatever. That's where you got to step in and make yourself laugh and be your own best friend. So do me a favor today, people, to anyone who hears this. If you know there's somebody out there that you haven't told in a while that you care about them or that you love them, reach out and do that today. Your choice, whoever it is, for whatever reason. It always makes me feel better. Maybe it will for you too. Have a good day.